Hi, welcome back to the series of the ABCs of HOAs. And today I'll be covering the exciting topic of evaluating HOA dues. So the thing about HOA dues, it's an interesting one because a lot of people will be like, well, I don't really want to pay this extra these dues in our area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. They can range anywhere from the 300s to even 8 or 900s or more. And these can seem like a pretty huge expense, especially if you're a first-time buyer or you're limited in terms of income or limited in terms of your budget for buying. Adding those HOA dues have to be added on in terms of your qualifications. And so a lot of times, I'll get people who say, well, I don't want to buy anything where I'm going to have to pay like more than 600 or where I'm going to have to pay a hefty HOA due. That makes a huge difference for them. So I think it's really important to understand what goes into these and where these go. So what are some of the things that are included, commonly included in the HOA fees? First, we have water that can be cold and hot. In some cases, you will have condos that have a separate water heating system. So, and that's generally going to be the responsibility of the owner, but the water itself is often provided or included within the HOA fees. Trash service, sewer service, gas. Gas is a little bit tricky, and so it's something that I would definitely be sure to ask about. But these are often included in terms of the HOA fees. Not electricity, not phone, not the things that you would normally set up on your own. That's not included. The next one is a common area maintenance. So that is, that has to do with the building, the hallways, the lobbies, elevators, and then in addition to that, any amenities such as the pool, a gym, recreation room, tennis courts. So maintaining all of that, updating, all of that is included in your HOA fees. Then there's the building and common area insurance. And I've mentioned in other videos, when you buy a condo or a townhome, and in an HOA, a lot of times what will happen is that for the insurance, you will just be responsible for purchasing your own insurance. That's the HO6 or quote unquote walls in insurance. That only covers the interior of your unit. And then the building and any common areas will be covered by insurance. And so that is part of what is paid for by your monthly HOA dues. There is also the less commonly you'll find some associations that have cable TV or earthquake insurance. So those are not always there, but there was a complex that I know of that actually covered phone that had phone service as well. Not too many people have landlines anymore, so that has probably changed even for those complexes. So for this next slide, I thought it would be good to cover, what are the costs of if you were to live in a single family home. The reason why I bring this up is because, people who are hesitant to pay HOA dues have to kind of think about, well, what goes into that? And so I mentioned what's covered, commonly covered by an HOA due. And here you can see if you live in a single family home, there's the cost of, say, water. You're going to have to pay for water on your own. That can be somewhere around $100 per month. That's, of course, it'll differ based on usage. I would say, just kind of add a note that due to the drought in California, our water fees have gone up significantly here in California, and especially in the Bay Area. So it's not uncommon. I've heard from other people who live in single family homes that their water bills can go way beyond $100 a month. So just simply the water. Trash, again, that's going to differ depending on usage, but you can say it averages out to about $50 a month. Landscaping, so if you have a gardener that comes through to help clean up your landscape regularly, your garden regularly, that could go anywhere from $100 to $150, many times more if you have a big yard. So this is just for kind of a standard average home, smaller home, but it can be pricey. And then there's insurance. And as I mentioned, you would for this one is for the year. So for the year, you would be looking at a bill of over $1,000 for a single family, as opposed to if you had that HO6 walls in policy, that would be about 500 or less, little give or take. And so you're looking at about half the cost when you're in for a condo as opposed to a single family home. So these are some of the things that, when you're paying the HOA fee, it's not just going out to nowhere. Part of that is going to cover these costs. So if you just look at it here, that's easily already like $300 or $400, even without doing anything else. Another thing to consider is that if you live in a single family home, there are going to be from time, over the years, there are going to be some large scale replacements and repairs and replacements that need to be made. A roof, for instance, you're looking at something like $30,000 to $40,000. It could be more than that. It just really depends on what kind of roof and how big the home is. But that's just a general estimate. A furnace, so the heater, you're looking at 5 to 10,000, again, possibly more. I've seen some bills of 20,000, 30,000 to replace the furnace. And the water heater, about $1,000, 7 to 8,000 if you're looking at an electric tankless or the on-demand water heaters. So just to make a note for the furnace and water heaters, there is a big push to phase out the fossil fuel burning appliances. The Bay Area Water Air Quality Management recently passed an ordinance where they're going to say that if you have to replace your water heater, you're going to have to replace it with an electric one instead of the gas burning ones. And the gas burning ones are going to be phased out by 2035 or so. So there's a lot going on in terms of that, and it may actually become even more costly to replace these items than it is now, especially if you have gas burning ones now and need to change out the electrical and upgrade your panels to be able to change it, to be able to have that, to be able to meet that code. And then finally, exterior painting. If you were just to do exterior painting and keep it up, you're looking at easily $4,000 to $5,000 or more. Just looking at my values here, I'm thinking I can easily see it going much higher than that for every single one of the things that I've quoted. So, when you're paying when you're paying your monthly HOA dues, part of that goes to that the first slide, the previous slide where I talked about the water, the trash, those kinds of services, all the different operations. A lot of your HOA fees are going to pay that. And then also there's money being set aside to take care of some of these capital improvements. So ideally, when you need these big items to be fixed, you're not handling it on your own. It's actually being done out of the reserves that you've been storing up as part of the HOA dues, as well as possibly needing a little bit of special assessment just to kind of make sure that you're keeping your reserves healthy. So what are some of the drawbacks of HOA dues? Obviously, the first one I don't even need to put in here, but it's just the fact that you have to pay them, right, in addition to your mortgage every month. But in addition to that, there's a sense of a lot of people are concerned because there's no control over how much the fees will increase each year. Sometimes I'll have people who ask me, can you look into, what's the history of how many increases they've had in the past? I would say it's difficult to get that information, first of all. And secondly, or more importantly, even if you have that information, it doesn't necessarily indicate if the fees are going to be increased each year. I have actually seen situations where a board didn't increase dues year over year for several years for different reasons, and then had to all of a sudden start boosting them up because they realized that they didn't have enough going to their reserves. So, so there's no way to really predict that, and there's no control over how much they'll increase. There's also the second point here is there's minimal control over how the money is spent. So if you're a homeowner and you're paying your HOA dues, you don't really have a say as to where that money goes to, on a daily basis, unless you're part of the board. And this is something I'll be talking about in a different video, but I would really encourage everybody, if you own a condo, consider serving on the board at least once, at least for a year, just so that you get an idea of what it takes to do that. I'm planning to do a video on why I'm on my own HOA board and how that experience has been. But I would just encourage everybody, it's good to kind of see how that is. But if you're not, you really don't have much control over how that money is spent. So your board could be not handling it very well, and you have no choice. Another point I would make about this is that these HOA dues are not tax deductible. So that's as opposed to the mortgage interest that you pay and you can deduct that. Uh, this is just money that you're spending, but it's the same as your water bill and other things like that, right? It's not tax deductible. So in conclusion, I would say understand what is covered and what is not covered in your monthly dues. So if you're looking to buy, see if there might be, what is the value in there. In some cases, if you have a gym, that's also, if you were to sign up for gym membership, you're looking at, maybe if you get a good one, I mean, a good deal, maybe $25, and or if you go even higher, maybe $50 or more per month. And so if that's included in your HOA dues, then that's an added value. Okay? Second, I would say evaluate what makes sense to you financially. So make sure that you have enough to budget for those HOA dues. If they increase, if there might be a special assessment, just kind of count the cost in terms of, what am I paying for with these dues, and what would I pay for if I lived in a single family home? Kind of think about it in those terms. Three, I would say consider the HOA dues as an investment in your property. HOA dues don't go to the board. They don't go to the property manager. They don't just kind of go out into thin air. They're actually put to use to help you maintain your property. In addition, there are the operating expenses such as water and the different utilities, but it's also to maintain the value of your property as a whole, because as an HOA, as an owner in an HOA, you own a portion of that HOA, right? And so if you consider that, okay, I'm making this investment into my HOA dues, into my HOA, it doesn't feel like that. And my last point is that it's a lifestyle choice. So whether to be living in an HOA, it might be maybe the first step to homeownership for a lot of, or it is the first step to homeownership for a lot of people, just because condos tend to be a little bit cheaper. It's nice because you don't have to worry about the exterior and maintaining it and gardening and things like that. For me personally, I am a real estate broker, but I live in a condo. And I gladly do that because my weekends are busy. I don't have time to where I want to worry about gardening or fixing a fence or things like that. It's also nice to be able to have neighbors, like when the power goes out, we're kind of, it doesn't feel quite so lonely and isolated. So all of that, it's a trade-off, paying monthly HOA dues and participating in that kind of a pot for savings and things like that is different. It's more of a cost, it feels like sometimes, but being in a single family home, you're also going to have to pay some costs. So it's really, rather than worrying about whether, oh, this one has HOA dues, or rather than making a decision based on whether you have to pay monthly dues or not, I would really encourage you to think about what your lifestyle, what do you want for your life, and move forward in that way accordingly. So that does it for this video on evaluating your HOA monthly dues. I hope this has been helpful for you, and that you'll just continue to tune in as I continue on with the series of the ABCs of HOAs. Please be sure to subscribe, and also put into the comments any questions or any topics that you'd like me to cover in the future. Thanks for watching.